I
There you
don't,
go.
Andy.
I got you now.
Yeah, you got me?
That worked.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a Luddite with this technology, so apologies.
That's all right. We all have our gifts.
Bearing with me, yes.
So the answer to my question, how do you pronounce your last name?
O'Hara.
O'Hara. Okay, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, either way is fine, but yeah.
Okay. All right, Tim, they're all yours. And there's going to be lots of other people watching this. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and give us some background of your work and your apprenticeship program and how your approach to designing these documents or curating them. I think some of them through your apprentices. Yeah, share with us a little bit how that's all come to be, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you all. Rancho Mastatal is a education center. It's a home as well as a working farm. We've been doing what we do for over 20 years now. We live in a small rural community of about 100 people north of the South Pacific coast of Costa Rica, Central Pacific coast, excuse me, about 45 minutes up the hill from Parita. We offer a wide array of educational programming, all which falls under the umbrella of sustainability, permaculture. So we offer classes in natural building, timber frame construction, earth building, bamboo construction, medicinal plants, agroforestry. We run 3 permaculture design certification courses each year. We have a couple of wilderness medicine classes that we run each year, as well as an array of other offerings in that workshop course realm. We also receive groups of high school students, college students, university students, gap year programs who come through and participate in our custom design educational programming. Again, all of those educational modules fall under the greater umbrella of sustainability. We have a year-long apprenticeship that you alluded to. Starts in mid-January and runs through mid-December. It's been kind of one of our defining programs. We bring in between 5 and 7 apprentices that live with us for the better part of a year and run through an intense and intensive educational offering that includes a lot of what I mentioned before. There are kind of 3 pillars to it: natural building, agroforestry, and food processing and fermentation. We also offer a lot of educational modules on topics outside of those 3 larger topics. We also run a 2-month internship that our apprentices actually run. Our apprenticeship is essentially structured to follow a pattern, which is learning, practicing, teaching, and then managing. So the apprenticeship is broken up more or less into quarters. And so that first quarter, they're running through some very intense educational modules, learning a bit of theory, as well as getting out and starting to practice on the ground at our education center and farm. The second quarter of the apprenticeship focuses more on the practice of those skills. So really practicing over and over what it we really feel like there's important part of owning a skill that has to do with doing something over and over and over again, as opposed to this idea of checking the boxes and moving on. Bucket lists are oftentimes talked about in today's day and age, and we're more interested in the deeper learning that comes in our apprenticeship. The third quarter of the apprenticeship focuses more on the apprentices actually assuming a teacher role, an instructor role, a mentorship role. They start to help with the teaching of our educational programs coming through the high school groups, as well as basically receiving their own small group of apprentices in the form of interns, which are with us for 2 months. They essentially design and manage that entire internship, and it's essentially a consolidated version of what they have learned in the apprenticeship up until that point. And then finally, the apprentices essentially take over the ranch. The core team begins to file out to visit family and friends, and the apprentices essentially assume a greater role, more responsibility. They end up basically making decisions in the orchard spaces, the food processing kitchen, the wood shop, the natural building realm. And that's a little recap kind of that part of our program. So it's a pretty dynamic project. We have a lot going on. Community integration is an extremely important part of our work. Our core team is made up of 6 individuals, 3 nationalized citizens of Costa Rica, 2 expatriates, and 1 Costa Rican. I was just listening to kind of the last part of your last session talking about the importance of community integration. I couldn't agree more with your comments, and that's been really a big focus of ours. Moving as expatriates into a small rural community was essential for us to integrate in a way that allowed us to be accepted, but B, as or more importantly, just to feel at home in a place that I didn't grow up in and wasn't raised in. And that for me has been a process that's taken a long time. And the rootedness that I sometimes talk about, I think, is so essential in having success in your work, as well as just being happy as an individual and human being. So I'll start with that broad overview.
Great, thanks. So, yeah, definitely. I love what you're saying there, that success in your work and happiness in your life is really hard to achieve when you were feeling alienated from our environment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical, and it takes time. It's a process, or at least it has for me. And, my wife and I have a 14-year-old daughter. That was a really big step for us, actually raising our child in the small rural community. I think after 7 or 8 years of living in Mastatal, it was really, for some people, what solidified kind of our commitment to the small rural community that we have decided to call home. And our daughter Soleil was a great bridge builder, even as a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, kind of facilitating these meetings with families perhaps that we didn't know as well up until that point, as she became friends with grandkids and kids. And she was a great conduit for us, really, to make inroads into our community that up until that point perhaps we hadn't been able to. So kids are amazing at kind of doing that bridge building work that adults sometimes seem to get stuck on.
Wow, thanks for mentioning that. As you say that, like, of course, that was definitely part of our reality. So much opened up for us when, my son was born at the farm, and and we ended up hiring, some help, some domestic help, and then all of a sudden, like, this person was in love with our kids, and now we had something more going on than hiring somebody to do stuff. Yeah, we had, like, that beginning of trust was being built, and gratitude, and then time started being spent just hanging out together. And the kids were definitely a major stimulant of that kind of activity. So thanks for bringing that up. That's a good point.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I know the focus of this meeting is kind of community agreements, so maybe I'll just add that has been an area that we've been doing a lot of work in for the last 8 years or so. It's something that has been critically important to kind of getting past that threshold when you start a new project such as this in a foreign land. As you're well aware, there are so many challenges, and without clear community agreements, as I'm sure you know and understand and agree with, really are essential to the longevity of this type of project, and we really didn't pay enough attention to those agreements early on. Kind of, you know, I came from a corporate background and kind of eschewing those corporate principles and kind of pushing that all away, and not wanting to rely on kind of written agreements that are difficult to decipher without a lawyer. And so in the beginning, I'd say we did a poor job of getting those documents basically done, writing them and making clear expectations with the people with whom we were working. And that's something that after 12 or 13 years, it became evident that we weren't going to be able to stick around much longer until we really started to invest the resources in creating really clear agreements, essentially with everybody that we interact with, whether that's an apprentice coming to live with us for a year, between core team members, people that you employ in your community, and even people that just come as guests to our education center. There has to be some level of clear documentation for those people to be able to interact in the space that you've created in a way that isn't destructive, in a way that contributes to the community and the communal aspects of your project. And really only until we started to focus more time and energy on those agreements and on the invisible structures that you talk about did we really start to see the light, I guess. Did we really start to operate in, I would say, a more harmonious manner? And it's been critically important to the success of our project and our community over the better part of the last 10 years.
Great. Yeah, it's awesome to hear you validate that from your own experience. I'm curious, you, besides the like, the kinds of contractor relationships you have with your laborers and other, work team within Rancho Mastatal, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember reading that you play a significant role in the village of Mastatal, and in like one of the associations, or are you taking a significant role in the villages association at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently the secretary of the Asociación de
That's it.
Desarrollo in Mastatal. So, yeah, I'm on one of the 7 members on the board of the local governmental institution that basically acts as the liaison between our community and the municipality of Puriscal, which Mastatal is a part of. So, yeah, it's a volunteer role, but yeah, important to kind of keep your finger on the pulse with what's going on. It is extra work, extra unpaid work, which can sometimes be a bit of a juggling act, but yeah, it is important, I think, for me to be able to have a voice in the community in that capacity. And yeah, it was an honor, of course, to be elected. It's a town of 100 people. It's not as if there are thousands of people vying to be the secretary of the Asociación de Desarrollo de Mastatal, but even so, it's validation as far as, I guess, people having the basic trust in what it is that the ranch is doing in our community. And yeah, it's just another important, I guess, demonstration for us as people that moved in from the outside that we are here for the right reasons. And when we did get to Mastatal almost 22 years ago, it was a very small, almost forgotten backwater, depopulating in massive ways, basically everybody leaving before they graduated from high school. No formal businesses in town at all, no phones. And so to see how it's kind of unfolded over the last 20 years as more and more locally initiated businesses begin to gain a foothold and contribute to what's becoming what I think is a really robust rural economy, I think has been, yeah, a real honor to be a part of. and hopefully an example for other small communities in Costa Rica, around the world, that that it is possible to re-ruralize a small, depopulating, uh, you know, pueblo en el campo, and with buy-in and opportunity creation, and really a dedication to local economies. It is something that, at least in our case, has worked for an increasingly large number of families that have called Mastatal their home for a lot longer than I have.
Yeah. And I'm curious, in this role as the secretary of the Asociación de Desarrollo, just to get an idea for people that might be playing around with the idea of doing such a thing, but what is your weekly or monthly commitment to that role? And what kind of
Yeah,
stuff do you do?
we usually meet twice a month, sometimes more depending on what's going on. But essentially, with the other 6 members of the Asociación, we meet and talk about community needs. There's money available each year from the municipality. It's called a 2%. So every small village essentially gets part of the national budget for our community. It's usually like $4,000, something like that. So we're responsible for deciding where to invest that money, how to spend it. Again, we're kind of that liaison between the mayor of Periscal and our communities. So trying to hear the concerns of the people of our community and then voicing them to the municipality. For example, if our road is deteriorating, we're the ones responsible for communicating that information to the powers that be, organizing fundraising activities for the Asociación, as well as other organizations, other community organizations, paperwork, meetings, an occasional trip into town. But for me, it's probably, you know, in a month, perhaps a 3 or 4 hour commitment. So it's not onerous, but it is above and beyond kind of the normal busy schedule that a lot of us do lead, even though we are doing an increasingly better job at kind of finding that balance in our day to day. But yeah, it is an additional responsibility to a list of things to do, which generally is longer than a single sheet of lined paper.
Right. It also brings up for me in something that I intended to talk about in today's presentation, and I didn't slip it in there, is this term that the Costa Ricans have of mal educado, or bad mannered, and it's not just in Costa Rica. Many of us, many people listening that have eco villages or communities or projects in northern countries, where manners has often, like having good manners, has kind of been diluted out of many pockets of, say, Americana, where we're rebelling against traditional manners, and there's this individualism, this fierce individualism, like I don't have to do what my mom told me to do to, and so I see a lot of foreigners come here with their liberated sensibility that are prancing around their pueblos, or even people, when I see, rainbow gatherings come up in places around the States or Canada, and there's these people that just feel so liberated and justified in doing and being however they want, wherever they want to be. And while technically, yeah, you are a free being to do whatever you want, the consequences are that we're eroding relationships, we're eroding trust, and we're eroding those bridges that would otherwise be able to be built by understanding the mannerisms that are appreciated by the culture. Now, of course, we don't have to go contrary and go out of our way to, if we don't buy into a particular ideology, we don't have to go full board into it. However, there's certain things here in Costa Rica, subtle things like when you come into when you see a Costa Rican show up into a room or a group of people, whether they know you or not, they go around shaking everybody's hand. That's just part of their culture. That's being a well-mannered person, right? Looking people in the eye when you talk to them. When you go into the store here, like in the States, you show up and you're like, I want this. And then they give it to you and you buy it and you go. But here, you're a jerk if you do that. Here, you go into the store, you look them in the eye, you say, hello, how are you? You shake their hand or fist bump these days. And you develop even a micro connection before making your requests. And that's something it took me a while to like really pick up on, like, oh, I'm kind of a jerk here. I'm just being, I came to a store to buy something. I mean, it's not ill-mannered in my idea to just come in and say what I want to buy, but to the Ticos, they pick up on that. And so I'm just wondering if there's any other little nuances like that of the Costa Rican culture, the unspoken agreements that you've seen that people could kind of pick up on and have a better perspective of and maybe implement into their mannerisms.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. I think the most important point that I'll pull out of what you just said is just taking that time. And first, you have to have the time to take the time. So, part of this might be reorganizing how you move through your day as compared to how it might have been from the country that you came from, and having to have that time and space to stop and have a chat when you're on your way somewhere, and being able to have a 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute conversation with someone about the weather or about something perhaps that's not on the forefront of your mind right then, and really making those connections, because that's part of it, and it's an investment, a very important investment. And I think people, at least in ours, I'm always coming from this kind of small, rural, small town perspective. You know, if you don't go and visit your neighbor for a few weeks, then perhaps, you know, your friendship is starting to dwindle a little bit. It is really important to the people of my community that you're face to face with them, more than just occasionally, and that you're bringing them a pizza from the Cobb oven on those nights when you have pizza parties, because you know that they're going to be bringing you a chorreado right after the new corn harvest, and it may seem like an inconvenience at times, at least in the beginning, as we reacclimatize to our new culture and environment. But again, the long-term investment is really in your happiness and in your security and in your acceptance. And without that, I wouldn't still be in Mastatal. It would be foolish to think that if we had built our gates high enough and strong enough and created everything that we needed within our gates, that I would be doing this with a smile on my face, I think is a myth. And without that deep community connection with the people that call this place home and always have, you really have to figure that out. For me, getting into the community was facilitated by joining the men's soccer team. You know, over 20 years ago, I always played team sports, but never soccer. I'd never kicked a soccer ball before, but team sports had always been a kind of a part of my upbringing. And so, I decided to go down to the soccer field early on and start to play in the Mejengas, the pickup soccer games. Welcome with open arms right from the get-go. The Mejengas in Mastatal can have 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old girls, all the way up to 75-year-old men, kind of all playing in the same field. And that then led me to get, an offer to join the men's team after I gained some skills. And that was kind of a real amazing way for me to connect, not only with the male community. I was playing on the men's team, but every Sunday going to a small community in our region and playing a game in those communities was not only about the exercise and the sharing of moments with your teammates, but also while watching other games, buying food to support the local organization that was hosting the event, talking with the players' families, meeting their kids. That type of investment, social investment, I think really is critically important. I think one other thing too that comes to mind is I do think, coming from a wealthier country, perhaps with a degree that most people in my community don't even think about achieving. Uh, that's just a basic 4 degree bachelor's degree from a college or university. Coming down with an attitude that I'm the teacher, or I'm going to teach or contribute, really, I think is misguided and misplaced. I never lived in the tropics before, and to think that we could land on our property and call ourselves an education center without opening our minds and understand that, without even knowing what species of trees are around, how could we be teaching timber frame construction in
Wow.
a way that was relevant? And so just understanding early on that we were the students first and foremost. We certainly had a positive contributing role in our community, but it wasn't so much the saviors of the local economy, um, as it was just landing slowly and softly, assuming that student role, and then little by little having more to say about what it was that was going on in our community and how that impacted uh, the members of our community socially, economically, and then of course the impacts that that has on the environment. So um, yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
So, Tim, to kind of poke a little bit deeper into the unspoken agreements that many people who come in to occupy their region, um, is there anything else that you've found are kind of unspoken, like things that maybe are part of the local culture in Mastatal that you had to discover, that nobody was coming to you saying like, well, this is kind of how we do things here, because maybe they're shy or whatever? Have you discovered anything else that was like, oh, I'm glad I know that?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically to us and our project, I think looking back there and knowing what I do now, I think there was at least an expectation from most people in our community that they would benefit in some way from our arrival. And so um, I think it's been really important for us to demonstrate that we're not um, picking favorites in our community. And I think that can be pretty common. Like, it's important for us to demonstrate to everybody, as much as that's possible, that what we're doing as a business is contributing to the community in a way that's impacting everybody or almost everybody positively. And early on that was hard. Most of our property is protected as a private wildlife refuge, and kind of as we came in and assumed stewardship of that land, it was obvious that the poachers in our community kind of had this wonderful piece of rainforest kind of taken off of their plates. And knowing who the hunters are, the poachers are, seeing them in the streets, interacting with them. My first gut reaction back then was to give them the middle finger, or call them a dirty name or whatever it would be. And it took a little while to understand. And this is where my daughter helped in a lot of these situations, to all of a sudden find myself in the homes of some of these poachers and better understanding where it was that they were coming from, and understanding that they have very similar needs and wants that I do as an individual, just coming at it from a different perspective, it's been really important for me now that it's been a couple of decades to maintain those relationships with people that might be moving through life in a way that's not in perfect alignment with mine, and keeping those doors open, talking to those people, asking them how their day was, stopping and chatting with them. And it's been incredible how, by keeping those doors open now, I'm able to talk to some of these men very candidly about, you know, my opinions about illegal poaching or whatever that might be, in a way that's really created a venue to have a conversation that I think perhaps in the long run can change that dynamic. I don't know if it will. Maybe it's a generational thing, but just being able to maintain a civil relationship with people that I might not agree with all the time has been really important, again, to kind of that long-term acceptance. So that comes to mind. I guess there's so many examples that I'm thinking about. I think, with, I don't mean to keep going back to my daughter, but by, putting her in the local elementary school, putting her in the local high school, and just kind of, again, demonstrating to people that we're just another contributing member to this small village, and we're not better or worse than anybody. The school system, I know that there are some expats that complain perhaps about the public school system here, or send their kids to private bilingual schools, which I think is fine and well. I'm not against that, but again, I think the success in part to our acceptance in our community has been kind of that willingness to play the game just like everybody else does, and to get out and use your body just like the way that everybody else does to make a living in our community, and go to people's funerals, and go to people's baptisms, and go to people's weddings. And even though the church is 120 degrees on a summer day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, showing up and demonstrating to the people that you're another member of the community and you care about what goes on there.
Thanks. Yeah, those are all great. Yeah, having our kids go to the local school made a big difference, and it built a lot of new relationships for us too. Some of the youth coming over to our place, and then the kids are coming over to play with our kids, and they go back and tell their parents that we're not, terribly strange people, that we're actually pretty kind, and we're talking to them and treating them nice. Like, that brought their parents over, and they got to see what us weirdos were up to with our mud built walls and stuff. So yeah, the kids open a lot of doors. Curious, another question I have for you is and I hear you that you came into the Pueblo, and people have a tendency, when they see foreigners come in with a project that's throwing money around and building and has a program and all of that, they might expect, like, oh, how can we benefit from this? How can we get some trickle down of that money? Which is the most simple base survival need thought that might pass through them. And it's good to normalize relationships to minimize that mentality, and just be like, oh, okay, they're just people who've got a program and they're doing it well, and it's not mine. But is there any like outreach projects or other initiatives that you guys have initiated in the village with your apprentices or
I
otherwise?
lost you for a second there. I think you asked about outreach into the community. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is a big topic I can talk about for a while. I guess I'll start just by saying that we do have a small nonprofit organization called the Mastate Charitable Foundation, which is a 501c3 based out of the U.S. We formed that in 2004. So through our small nonprofit, we're doing all sorts of community outreach. As far as the ranch goes, yeah, I can answer that question in a few different ways. Um, we have local employees. We only employ from our local population. So certainly that's one way that we're able to support the community economically. But I think it's been more important for us to understand that we can't be the only business in this community um, and expect that our community is resilient in the long run. If Rancho Mastatal folds, closes, if we get up and leave, and then the entire economy of Mastatal falls with our departure, then that isn't a very resilient economy. In addition, managing people takes a lot of time and energy, I'm sure you're aware of. And so as we've kind of moved through the evolution of our business, what we've been trying more and more to do is encourage other people to start businesses that we have identified as necessary in our community, or businesses that we feel could do well, and then with people that we identify in the community, try to work alongside them to be able to start creating business plans, invest in infrastructure, and actually get those businesses up and off the ground. So in that way, we're benefiting in the case of the Iguana Chocolate, which is an amazing organic chocolate farm in our region. Just through their success, now we have another amazing place to send our guests to go have an amazing experience in our community. We have access to incredible local chocolate. Jorge Salazar, who's one of the owners there, has been simultaneously translating our permaculture design certification classes for 16, 17 years. He now is one of the principal teachers in our Spanish PDC. And so essentially over the years, we've seen all of these small businesses begin sprouting up in a place 21, 22 years ago where there weren't any formal businesses. Now, as you drive into Mastatal, you see signs for natural history guiding tours, bird watching tours. The Iguana Chocolate, there's a local restaurant, bar, there's a hostel up the road from us, a vanilla farm, and on and on. And these are all businesses that we are working alongside of, but have their own independent independent businesses that don't rely on us entirely, even though we all rely on one another to a certain extent. It's just been a way, I think, to create resiliency by identifying needs and then figuring out a way to have those needs met within our community. For example, recently, we buy almost all of our calories from local farms, but there are still some food items that we get in from the outside in an effort to make sure that our food offerings are dynamic enough. We'll buy in some veg that we don't grow at the ranch, for example. And even though we can't grow all veg in our climate, we can grow a lot of the stuff that's coming in from the outside with these ambulatory trucks that come and sell off the back of the pickup. And so we're working now with a former papaya grower who essentially had two very poor seasons, lost his entire crop, very interested in farming, very interested in organic production. So he just, over the last couple of months, has built a couple of hoop houses in our community. We offered some startup money from the nonprofit for him to make those initial investments. And he's essentially, planting mustard greens and arugula and red pepper, cilantro, some of these products which nobody is producing currently in our community, though, that can be produced, and foodstuffs that not only the ranch but other businesses in town and individuals in town, I think, will scoop up once it's made available locally. So those are a couple of examples that come to mind.
That's more than a couple, buddy. That's awesome. You guys are making some beautiful waves where you're at, I'm sure. And actually that was one of the things I started off my call earlier today with, was this idea, like if you want to convince your local neighbors to go chemical free, and go organic and transition, you can point your finger and give them all the data about how hellish it is to be poisoning our rivers and stuff. But if you just tell them that you'll buy everything they grow and give them a
Yeah.
method that they can do it, there's no struggle. There's no
And
opposition.
we basically do essentially buy anything that comes to our door from a local farmer. And now we're just this year, we started to, like in the case of cassava or yucca, that's something that a lot of farmers still produce. And we still, I mean, we consume, I don't know how many kilos of cassava a week, a lot. But now what we have also been doing since the local high school, for example, can't buy local produce just due to the restrictions with the Ministry of Education. They are obligated to buy from certain vendors and providers, and most of that food is coming from the outside. So a workaround for us now is when we do have too much cassava coming in, we can turn around then and donate it to the school, as long as they're not buying it from local farmers. As long as they're having it donated to them, they can accept that and then incorporate those local foods into the diets for the children here, which has been, yeah, been awesome. So yeah, having the willingness to just basically buy whatever's coming in. We feed a lot of people, and that really longer than it might otherwise be, because areas of Costa Rica, the Se Vende signs in front of fincas are, abundant. Everybody's looking to sell, or kids aren't getting into farming, and so trying to create that demand and the circumstances that allow farmers to stay in business and hopefully do it better than their grandparents and parents have, has been really important. That has necessitated like a real shift in the way that we eat. We tried for years to grow big juicy tomatoes, and in our climate, it's extremely difficult to do that. And so the transition too of our kitchen and the culture of eating and what we're eating, we've never eaten jackfruit before, and nobody in our community had eaten jackfruit before. So just figuring out how to use the abundance that is in your climate and then turn it into delicious food that people can really get behind. We just came out with a cookbook a few months back that was dedicated entirely to what we can eat in our ecosystem, what we incorporate into our diets, what grows easily and well there: bamboo and taro and cassava, and pejibaye, and all of these amazing roots and tree crops that we weren't used to before. And having to figure out new recipes for taro, because we didn't eat much taro prior to coming here, but now we bring in many kilos of it every week. And so that also has been an important part of figuring out how to eat more locally. It's been a process as much in the kitchen as it has, with me personally, as it has in the farming community in Mastatal. And I guess the last thing I'll say, a little bit off topic of what I was just talking about, but in line kind of with what we're the greater topic, is just how we have been developing workshop content taught by Spanish speaking Costa Rican instructors to Spanish speaking Costa Rican and other Central American students. So we just had a medicinal plants class taught by 2 Costa Ricans to 20 Costa Ricans. We just had a bioconstruction class taught to 22 Costa Ricans by a Costa Rican. We have a Spanish permaculture design certification class coming up next week that's being taught by 3 Costa Ricans to a mostly Costa Rican audience, and that took us a long time to do. We were translating classes for a long time because it was important for us from the beginning to be able to reach Spanish speakers, but we just didn't have the network, the resources to be able to offer these classes in, Costa Rica's native tongue. And that's been a real amazing development for us. And we made it a point to price these classes at a much reduced price compared to the English classes on those same topics. And we've made it a point to pay those instructors the same exact instructor rate that we would pay an English speaking instructor for an English class. And so that's also something that I just wanted to share, because our workshop calendar will continue to have an increasing number of Spanish courses taught in Spanish, so that this information can get, to the people that would most benefit from it, as well as the people that in the long run will benefit us as a business and as a community most.
So I'm curious with that, if you're paying the same to the teachers, but you're offering reduced rates from what you offer your English speaking, do you just simply, the ranch doesn't make a profit on those? Or is it that you subsidize it either with your foundation, or do you subsidize it with like a tithing from your English speaking classes? How do you make that sustainable?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of the above. It is a give back. That's kind of how it started for us when we were getting to be a profitable enterprise. It was just important for us to, the third ethic of permaculture, fair share, to be giving some of that back to the amazing community that have made it possible for us to be here for as long as we have. So we are okay at breaking even for those classes. But again, depending on how you define wealth and capital, right? What comes out of those classes in the way of networking, connections, people that you work with in other profit-making capacities in the future, really, I feel in our short experience with this, it does pay us back socially as well as economically in the long run. We do have a Central American scholarship fund that is a part of our nonprofit, the nonprofit I mentioned a little while ago. So we do also subsidize some students, low-income students, to take these classes. And then in the case of, say, the permaculture design certification class, it's priced at $400 for the 2-week experience, which is about a quarter of the price that we charge for the English class. And one way that we're able to make that work is that we have the Central American rate, and then we have the Mexico rate, which is $950, and then we have the U.S. rate, or people coming from developed countries, which is the normal price of $1,500 that we charge for our English class. So in this class coming up, we have a few people from Mexico coming, somebody from Spain, I think somebody from Argentina, and so they are paying a higher price than the Central Americans, which also does help to make the course slightly profitable. So we've tried a little bit of everything. That's kind of currently how we're going at it. We're just trying to make sure that the rest of our workshop calendar is making enough money to cover our expenses, pay our salaries, and then hopefully a bit left over so that we can run more and more of these programs. And it's just been amazing. It feels like the ranch has been a bridge builder a little bit in these classes, during these classes. It's amazing, to see all these Costa Ricans come together, have this transformational experience. Costa Rica is a small country, as you know, so it's amazing how many of these people have already run into each other somewhere else. And I feel like I can see like this network just being built throughout the country of people that are environmentally minded, socially minded, starting to connect dots and starting to create friendships and business ventures, and hopefully that will lead to more and more people, starting the types of enterprises and businesses that benefit this country, benefit the environment, benefit the small communities where they're operating, whatever the case might be.
Well, you're definitely lighting the way, Tim. I am so grateful that we captured this. And I'm really grateful that I made the decision to post the guest presentations publicly on YouTube right away. This is something I hope more people get the chance to absorb. You are really walking the walk, all the way down to, I just want to pick out one of the things I highlighted, the fact that you buy food from your local farmers and donate it to the schools or whatever as a mechanism to encourage them to keep growing organic. Like the amount of money that could go into like trying to build a big campaign to educate people to go organic, and you just buying their food and eating it and donating the rest as like, that's brilliant, dude. That's just so easy and low cost and connected. It's fabulous. You've shared so many really great pieces that I am going to share in future stories with lots of people that I talk to in my work coming forward. So, wow, thank you so much. We're definitely coming to the end of our call here, and I'm going to let you get back to your family and your downtime. But you really showed up, Tim. Thanks so much for being here with us. Before we go, do you have any special ways besides your website that you'd like to invite people to learn more about your work or get involved?
We do social media, Instagram, Facebook, so you can find all that information on our website, which is just ranchomastatal.com. Yep, we are very active posters. We're sharing information all the time. We send out a few blogs every month, so we have a lot of information that we're sharing out there, a lot of workshop content. So
No, your blogs are so value rich. I definitely recommend anyone signing up to your newsletter. You guys are consistent, and a lot of fun flavors come through there.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure being with you. I wish the best in your work, and happy to continue chatting about all this stuff in future conversations.
Good news. I'll definitely call them out and hit you up next time I'm up in your neck of the woods. All right. Thanks again, Tim. Have a great day.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.